First of all, congratulations for holding this very important meeting. This conference should be a very important interactive session for both the government and the industry to understand each other's point of view. The idea of having this discussion is not just to tell us what we think, but also to understand what you want us to understand. It's very important for us to get the right inputs in policy making. Ultimately, policy is for the people. Policy is not for government. Policy is for the people. If the people understand it, people want, yes, this is the right direction in which we are going, then it's always good. I'll begin with the question that Virat has opened the discussion with. Next 25 years will be a period of inclusive growth. It will be a period when people at the bottom of the pyramid, people at the margins of society, people who are left out of the development race so far, people who are marginalized in the society, all those sections of society will see a huge, humongous change in their living standards, a change in their dignity levels, a change in the way they are treated in the society. The growth will come from multiple factors. One big factor will be investment as a primary tool of growth. We have seen the examples of many countries during their formative phases, and also very highly developed countries, how they came out of a very deep depression, how the World War ravaged certain countries and how they built up the economy post that. Many of those things have been studied by great economists. Learning from all those experiences, the first and foremost will be investment. I'll touch that part in a bit with some numbers and thought process in detail. Second will be huge focus on manufacturing. Huge focus on manufacturing. What we have started with PLI, what we have started with simplification of various laws, what we have started with multiple initiatives on decriminalizing some of the statutes, removing some of the laws which are archaic today. That entire process is going to continue. Third element of this growth process will be focus on entrepreneurship, focus on innovation, focus on startups. We understand that the energy levels of our youngsters, the way, the passion and zeal with which our people can put their minds, apply their minds on a problem and solve it at population scale, that's phenomenal. That's something which is really, really unparalleled in many large economies. That's where the third element of growth will come from. Fourth part of the growth will come from simplifying various provisions related to the digital world, because the economy is digitalizing day by day. You must have noticed in the previous budget, Honorable Finance Minister actually spent almost significant part of her speech was on how the Indian economy is going to be digitalized. So how do we create a very important framework? How do we create a framework which is comprehensive, which is in tune with times, which is technology agnostic, which is able to respond to the needs of the industry, of the people, of the society, of the government, of all stakeholders in a very significant way, in a proper way, methodical way. That will be the fourth element. Fifth element will be a lot of focus on the social structures. For example, the education sector. For example, the health sector. For example, our overall legal jurisprudence. Lots of these need huge reforms. The new education policy has initiated that process. Schemes like Ayushman Bharat have started that process. So how do we ramp it up? How do we scale it up over the next 25 years? These will, the last element will be, along with rights, focus on duties. If people do their duty, then the other people's rights are automatically enforced. So there will be a huge focus on duties. There will be along with rights, there will be a focus on duties also. Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, in his vision, India deserves to be a developed country by 2047 when we reach 100 years of our independence from the decades, years, centuries of slavery. From that period, when we come out, we need to move significantly faster than what we have been moving. With that vision and with these fundamental thrust areas, government would be moving along with the industry and society and all the stakeholders in achieving that goal.
Thank you, sir. Those 6 pillars really sets the ball rolling for our discussions over the next 2 days. But I see that 3 of those, your ministry is the one that you have a very, very important role at 4 of them, in fact, manufacturing, innovation-driven industries, digitalization, and also upliftment of people who've sort of not been on the development path so far. I think they're impacted certainly by all this. So thank you for spending the time to sort of discuss that. With your permission, if I can now go into a little bit about the specific ministries and the visions there. But what better thing to start with than the Telecom Bill, copies of which are available here. But I said we didn't need those. It's in every state capital by late last night. It was everywhere being read. We will have comments. I know that you have given us time till 20th of October. I think extension letters must be being made ready for getting more time to sort of read through the 40-page document, 43-page document. Just for the delegates, this is a bill that hopes to repeal a 138-year-old legislation. The Indian Telegraph Act was written 9 years after the telephone was invented by Graham Bell. So talk about being tested over time. It was written before wireless was even invented. In fact, 105 years before the first wireless phone was written. So that's how long it's lasted. But it's time. It's time for us to move on. It's time for us to give this country a new legislation that will become the basis of, many of the things that the Honorable Minister spoke about. So, sir, if I could turn to you on both the highlights on the need for this change, which I think is understood, but also what are the key policy objectives that we hope to achieve through this?
The digital world needs a comprehensive set of legislations. Prime Minister has given us the target that our digital legal framework, regulatory framework, should be globally benchmarked. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that we simply go around and copy whatever is best in the world. That means we have to aim at creating a digital legal framework which the world should come and study. And that's a very big objective, but it's possible. If we start applying our mind very thoroughly and we look at what our realities are, then we should be in a position in the next 1.5 to 2 years, to completely revamp the entire digital regulatory framework. A framework which aims to balance the societal objectives, rights of individuals, duties of individuals, technology agnostic framework, a framework which allows a very important interactive role with the industry. Now, for example, the process that we are following, a very consultative process. So how did we start? First, we had discussions with the most important industry stakeholders. I mean, the industry groups, the practitioners who are there in telecom, let's say. They started giving us the initial thoughts. Basis that, we prepared a consultation paper. That consultation paper was up for consultation and comments for a very significant time, almost 45 days. Basis the comments we received on the consultation paper, we drafted a bill. And that bill has been uploaded for further consultations. Along with the bill, you would see an explanatory note. That's something which is new. giving a very detailed explanatory note, explaining what is our thought process, how we are thinking, and why we are thinking what we are thinking. Why we want to bring, let's say, something as important as voluntary undertaking. Now, a license is a very complex document. Sometimes, even because of oversight, one might make some violations of the license terms and conditions. Why should that become an offense? Shouldn't that be treated as a voluntary undertaking? Somebody comes, okay, fine, I made this mistake, this is the penalty I'm paying for making this mistake. Let's go forward. Something as fundamental as that has been brought in this bill. Something as profound as having a proper restructuring mechanism, looking at the cheat sheet. Important. So, having a proper restructuring mechanism, industry does go through various phases, and sometimes because of business environment, sometimes because of technology changes, sometimes because of various other factors, there is a need for restructuring. How do you put that in the bill so that the industry gets a very clear roadmap, a clearly defined roadmap? Okay, fine. If restructuring has to happen, then these are the things that I have to take care for. These are the things which will be an obligation on me. These are the things which are my rights, right? So that kind of clear framework has been put in this bill. Innovation, very important. As we discussed the 6 big pillars, innovation and startups is going to be a very important growth element, growth dimension in our journey next 25 years. How do we create an innovation sandbox? Somebody wants to try out a new telecom new way of using spectrum. How do we allow that team to use a regulatory sandbox without getting into a 30-page license? How do we get that team into a situation where they can try and test their technology? Those kind of things have been brought in the law itself. If we provide that legal backing, then the possibility of getting into a judicial process, into a process of regulatory conflicts, all those things get automatically solved. That's why we have brought those constructs within the law itself. These are not hard-coded constructs. These are constructs which are kind of creating the framework. So once the framework is there, then we have the ability to discuss with the industry. Let's say a startup comes and says that I need a 10 square by 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer area in which I want to try this new technology. This framework provides that possibility. Then in a growth of digital, the right of way will become a very important enabling factor. So we have created a PM Gati Shakti right of way portal, all the state in a very good federal cooperative spirit. We have discussed with the states, and all the states have joined their portals. They have kind of integrated their portals with the PM Gati Shakti portal. But that portal is again a enabling structure. What if some municipality, some panchayat somewhere is still not able to provide permissions in time? Can we provide a legal framework for that? Can we give a legal backing for that? What if some anti-competitive actions are taken by people who have been, let's say, PPP-based airports? So, is there an element of trying to avoid somebody? Can we remove that element? So, those are the things, lots and lots of thought process has gone into it. These are kind of things we have brought in the law. We will be bringing a series of at least 3 more legislations, I can say, in which the entire digital regulatory system will be brought up to standard, up to global standards, and we should be the economy where people actually come and say that, okay, at a population scale, a billion plus population, a society as diverse as ours, an economy as complex as ours, an economy which is growing, what are the things that we should look at when we are drafting our legal structure. So that is the objective with which we are moving forward.
Thank you, sir. So you've said that this plus 3 more, basically 4. So basically a quad of digital legislations for the next decade that the Honorable Prime Minister has called the tech decade. I think that's the way to kind of, for us to own that space and contribute to that space. I think that's a excellent message. Thank you for spending the time to say that. The other thing I wanted to ask you, sir, was that I think, I'm not sure if you have it on your radar, but we do. It's 14 months and 15 days to the day that you took over these 3 roles. It's exactly that, and 14 and a half months. And one of the first things that you did publicly, which sort of had an impact, was the telecom reforms. So that was a difficult state that the sector was. If I could ask you to spend a few minutes before we go to other pieces on how is that playing out in your view for the telecom sector, which becomes the bedrock for all of these services that need to be provided and to lift the nation to a digital economy.
Prime Minister's vision on telecom is that he says telecom is a globally benchmarked industry. Telecom is not, which is telecom of India is different from telecom of UK or telecom of US. Telecom is something in which always there is a global standard. ITU sets the standards and we all follow one standard for equipment which is throughout the world similar, right? Why can't we have a regulatory framework which is in tune with the global thing? So we started looking at what are the issues that we are facing. The first fundamental set of reforms which Prime Minister approved in September last year was a series of structural reforms, a series of procedural reforms, and an element of removing the stress in the industry. That has gone very well. For example, something like a tower, you set up a tower, the permission used to be in about 10, 11 months as an average. Today that has come down to few days. Things like so many other things. The other day we were showing a chart in the COI meeting. The average time which used to take like 130 odd days for a typical ROW permission is today 6-7 days. So those are the things which have happened. We had about 400 odd paper applications which were stored in various warehouses, and they had to be brought in trucks to the Department of Telecom, Sanchar Bhavan for audit and all. That thing is all vaporized. It's all digital, completely digitalized. That entire, sometimes industry says that don't move so fast. We have to, actually somebody has said that 2 of the senior leaders have said, wait. So that has really made a big difference. That has brought the industry from a huge kind of difficult phase, I wouldn't use any harsh words here, but very difficult phase into an era where now it is being seen as a sunrise industry. New people are looking at telecom in India. New players are actually considering that yes, this is the time when we should come. We started with that. Then we came with WPC reforms, Wireless Promotion and Coordination Wing, which is for a large number of frequency spectrum allocation. And happy to share with you that today not a single license for a spectrum is pending for more than 28 days. I mean, it's something which has really, nobody comes to me for reminding me that, sir, there is a license pending. Nobody comes to anybody anymore. So that much entire thing is now, and most of the things are happening in the WPC, the spectrum license thing. Moment you press your digital payment button, the spectrum license is available online, like it's in seconds. So that kind of thing has happened. You don't have to run after officers. You don't have to be in the corridors. That's the second set of reforms. The third set of reforms was about ROW, and that has really helped. And that was very difficult also, because getting all the states on board, it took us a lot of time, a lot of advocacy, a lot of discussions with the states, but that has happened. And the fourth set was, how do we have 1885 law, 1950 law, 1933 law. And the world has really, really changed since then, I can say that much at least. So how do we bring our legal structure for telecom in a proper format? So this is the fourth set of reforms. Fifth set of reforms will be about the whole license conditions. It's a very complex document, 300-page document. How do we convert that into a very simple document? Since license flows out of the law, so the license reforms will follow the enactment of the bill. So in a very methodical way, we are moving step by step. We have about 15 such steps in our work plan, by end of which we should see India's telecom sector as among the best in the world, I would say.
So on a lighter note, not only did they bring it in trucks, actually telecom companies where I spent 20 years used to hire basements to actually store those documents. It was unbelievable. So, thank you for that. I know most people wouldn't, at least the young generation can't even believe that used to happen only a decade ago. If somebody can get a mic across to my colleague here and former president of PAFI and managing director of Abbott, he has a question on CapEx. I'll come to him in a moment. But if I can, sir, as that mics get there, your view on railways, if I can talk about that, and sort of in general terms, slightly over a year, I know the private sector in general tends to engage with railways slightly less, but I know that you put out, there's a massive opportunity now on its way with tenders, and the reforms are underway. So if you could speak a little bit about that, and how can the industry participate in that process, that would be of great value to the delegates.
So the first thing I'll say is, what was last year's CapEx in railways? What was the investment that railways did? Any guesses? 1,93,000 crore.
Wow.
Actual CapEx put in railways. 1,93,000 crore. This used to be something like 45,000 crore a few years back. Railways was always starved of investment, and this is a very important part of the economy. If we have to bring the logistics cost of the economy down from 14% to 9%, the only way is to increase the rail share in logistics from the current 27% to 45%. That's the only way. And that requires humongous amount of work. Work on simplification of the processes, work on the way people actually execute projects. We require reforms of the system of rules which has been there since ages, like 60, 70 years. A whole focus on getting new technology in, and simultaneously making sure that the passenger experience and the people who are giving their cargo for transportation, their experience totally changes. These are the fundamental constructs on which railways is working. Begin with passenger experience. I don't know how many of you have traveled by Vande Bharat train, or at least seen the video of the new Vande Bharat train. How many of you have seen the video of new Vande Bharat train? The train has been tested at 180 kilometers per hour on the existing tracks. These are not even new tracks, right? A glass of water is kept in the driver's cabin, and the glass of water doesn't fall, doesn't shake, doesn't move. That's the level of detailing in which we went when Prime Minister gave us the target of creating a world-class train. When he said world-class, what does it mean? World-class basically means acceleration. World-class means the riding comfort. World-class means energy, how much regeneration happens. So on all these parameters, for example, acceleration, bullet train reaches 0 to 100 in 55 seconds, 54.8 seconds. This train reaches 0 to 100 in 52 seconds. Vande Bharat achieves 0 to 100 in 52 seconds. So that kind of thought process. Ride index, which is where the comfort for passenger comes while traveling in the train, that is 3.2, which is world standard. Once the tracks are improved, this ride index will automatically improve to 2.8. Higher the ride index, higher is the level of discomfort in the train. Lower the ride index, better is the train. That means lesser vibrations. Regeneration. So when this train is braking, it becomes a powerhouse. It generates power and it starts feeding that power back into the overhead catenary. So that kind of innovation, it's phenomenal. Stations, completely redesigning the stations. Already 45 stations tenders have been floated and more are in the offing. The journey of a passenger should be, and this is a sector which is catering to the bottom of the pyramid. Remember this first statement I said, inclusive growth. How do we improve the passenger experience of the people who cannot afford a flight? Yes, flight also should reduce its cost, and so many things are happening in the aviation sector also. Huge growth in the aviation sector. But there will be a large population. You cannot move 1.4 billion people with purely by aviation. For this kind of population scale, we are moving 8 billion people every year. Last year we moved 7.85 something. 8 billion is the average. We are moving 8 billion people every year by trains. So that much, so every person moving at least on an average 6 times. So that much movement, that much transportation traffic on rail, huge investment has to happen. And the absorption capacity has significantly improved. The average used to be 6-7 kilometers a day, new commissioning. This year we will be significantly increasing this. We should be achieving 12 kilometers a day, and hopefully we will be doing about 14 kilometers a day. So that kind of system change, that kind of absorption capacity, people who are in construction segment, construction machinery, steel, cement, designing, engineering consulting, engineering design, all those firms are really now on a very, very strong hiring spree. So people tell me that engineering design people, they said that we don't have people. It's that kind of thing. So I'm very glad that it has started the employment, it has spurred that employment cycle.
So as you speak through this, to have the telecom network, to have the railway network, to have manufacturing electronics, this is the lifeblood of the country. Amazing responsibilities, and thank you so much for getting into that much detail as you do. If I may turn to my colleague Ishtiaq, please.
Thank you, Viren. We know that, in your previous avatar, you worked on the CapEx-led growth strategy, and that's spanning out in the last conversation that you've just had about railways. But as you lead different sectors, telecom, IT, railways, the question that I have is that how do you see us playing that role in that strategy? What is the role of the private sector? This is represented here at scale. What do you really see us partnering into? Because I know that the capex investment from the government side is on a high, and like you said, very high speed, scale, speed, and sustainability. What is the role for us?
Very important question. And I'll take a step back. If you look at our growth strategy in the budget of 2020, this entire strategy got formulated because the economy was in very, very difficult situation when Prime Minister Modi took the reins of the country. It was in really bad shape. The bank balance sheets were very, very, very distressed. There was an environment in which crony capitalism, all kinds of stuff, the kind of things which were happening, it was a very difficult situation. First, focus was on repairing all those institutions, making sure the institutions are in good shape. Then starting the investment cycle. In the budget of 2021, a very seminal shift in the direction of economy happened. That was capex driven. If you look at our economy's structure, we are today about 232 trillion rupees economy, GDP, nominal basis, right? Economy's structure is roughly 60% is consumption. About 27% was investment, which is a very low number. Now, for an economy at this stage of growth, we should be having anywhere between 35 to 40% as the investment as part of our economy structure. Now, how do we start that cycle? All of you know that a few years back, generally capacity utilization in our plants was anywhere between 60 to 65%, 60 to 70%. How do we take it to a level where fresh capital investment cycle starts? So government took a conscious decision of spurring that investment through public investments. And 5.5 trillion rupee investment was announced in the budget. And that was achieved through various series of reforms. Now, even if we take 3.6 as the multiplier can be, depending upon the sector, it can be anywhere from 2.6 to 4.2 or even 4.5, depending upon the sector. The average Indian economies, we have done some studies of last 20 years, average multiplier is 3.6 for the capital investment. That investment spurs a fresh cycle of growth, starting from construction industry, starting from commodities, moving on to the below that level. If you look at the journey of a rupee invested by government, it passes through almost 30 different stages before it gets fully consumed. And out of this, about 60% is in the MSME, which means an investment of, let's say, that 5.5 trillion became 7.5 trillion rupees in the budget of 22. And that growth has really created the difference in the economy. Today, almost every sector that we speak with is looking at fresh capex cycle, starting fresh investment, starting fresh factories, setting up new plants. That kind of cycle has started. Employment has begun. Employment today is what used to be 371 million as per CMI is today more than 400 million as the number of employed persons. So that cycle has begun. What is there for you in that cycle? For you, this is the point where the economy starts on that inflection point where growth, demand, consumption, demand for services, demand for goods, all that thing starts in a very significant way. My request to all of you is, don't be surprised if you start feeling that, oh, we are not able to match the demand. Be prepared, have trust in this cycle. This is a time-tested method of growth. This has been tested in multiple economies across multiple years. This is a very time-tested growth, and the commitment is very strong. You would be listening to the finance minister, you would listen to prime minister, you would listen to commerce minister. Every sector is doing their best in making sure that the investment cycle is properly moving in the right direction, in the right trajectory. So be prepared for that kind of investment. Take advanced steps. If you think that the capacity utilization of any of your plant or any of your business is going to be X in 3 years, probably you might achieve that in 1.5 years. Then you shouldn't be caught by surprise. So that's what I'll request you to take a serious look at.
Thank you, sir. If I could now, in the last 5-7 minutes, talk about your request you to throw some light on the work that's happening in MeitY. Firstly, the data protection bill. The government has been sort of very candid about that. You put out a statement saying we need to review this. We need a bill that is future ready. So if I could request you to have a few minutes on that. And with that, if you could speak a little bit about the amendment that's been carried out last night by the on the semiconductor piece, which is also a great reflection of the fact that the policy document was written. It had some spaces that needed to be filled out, and so those amendments have now come through, and now it's looking more complete, more forward-looking, and something that will attract more interest than when we first started in December last year. Done this within a gap of 8 or 9 months, which is exactly the kind of flexibility that the industry expects, hopes, and to work with. So on those 2 issues.
So I'll take semiconductor first. Semiconductor is very, very important part of our digital journey. And this is something which is today of strategic importance, for economic importance. From any point of view, if you see, the world also wants diversity in the supply chain. The entire world, I mean, the leaders of almost all the companies that, all the industries that meet us, they say that we are looking for a trusted supply chain partner for semiconductors. So last year, 15th December, Prime Minister approved the semiconductor policy. Our focus was on getting the fabs in place, making sure that the design ecosystem is created, making sure that the talent which is there in the country, that talent finds its way into a very important industry. So, unlike many other countries which focused primarily on the incentives which were given for capital and other fiscal incentives, we also committed on developing 85,000 professionals from MTech, PhD down to BTech to the level on the clean room, right? People who are going to work the clean rooms. And we have worked assiduously on that. We have already empaneled about 55 institutions who are creating course curriculum today, already started creating course curriculum. So that's the journey. Through this journey, we found some of the best brains have joined us. People like Vinod Dham, people like Professor Paul Raj of Stanford University. Those are the people who are advising us. Basis their advice, we have expanded the scope of the semiconductor program, which is what was approved by the cabinet yesterday, by Prime Minister yesterday. The other part, within the time that we have, the Digital Data Protection Bill, you know the reason why we had to withdraw, because too many amendments had gone and the world has changed since 2019. So we are in very good position today when the bill is uploaded. The concerns that industry and society both had will be very neatly addressed, first. Second, it will be a very focused bill because we are looking at a comprehensive digital legal framework where Telecom Bill holds a very important as a gateway to the digital world, right? Digital Data Protection Bill, which focuses on the rights versus the society's imperatives. Then we have other items in the work, Digital India Act, which looks at the IT Act, which is of 2000 vintage. How do we modernize that? How do we bring in a entire thing, right? Multiple items are being worked simultaneously. So again, we will follow a very transparent, consultative process. Prime Minister has given us a very clear mandate that whatever bill you prepare, and he has very categorically said that it has to go through a very significantly transparent consultative process. So it will be uploaded for consultation. We will take your views before finalizing anything.
Thank you, sir. That really gladdens the heart of this group because that's what they do. They want to engage the government as much as possible through consultation. I'm going to seek the indulgence of the organizers to actually snatch a few minutes from the next session. I want to ask you one last question, and then my colleague here, Tanmoy, will sort of offer the vote of thanks. If I could, for teams that work and support policy making in the government, who engage every day, who provide inputs, who meet with the government, whose job is to represent the government's views to their CEOs and to represent their company's views to the government. What is your advice in the best, most effective manner for them to function over the next, let's say, decade as we move into this incredible growth phase? Because they will, I think, have a really important role to help working closely with the government so we get this right along the lines that we wanted.
That's a tough question. Because
keep it for the end.
Person who comes with some advocacy would like to present it in the best possible way. My request, and I think, do we have youngsters here?
Yes, lots of youngsters here. We've got some students who are also here who are students of public policy in their 20s. So
very good. So you are the guys who are going to be the key decision makers by 2047.
They'll be in their 50s, right?
So, my
Just want to remind them.
my request is, whenever anybody goes for policy advocacy, please go with the plus and minus both. Please go with the pros and cons of. Please present both pictures, because until trust develops, it will not really work. Until you really gain the trust of the people who you are working with, I don't think the needle will ever move. It will always be seen as, okay, is it something which this person is coming with only for the sake of his or her company or that industry? If you come with a complete picture, come with a holistic picture, this is where the country wants to go. This is where our industry can play this role. If you do this, these are the pros, these are the cons. You take your call. I think if that is the construct, it really helps.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't attend any other session, let me tell you that's the best advice you're going to get across the next 2 days. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending the time.